you so much, Viev. Thank you, Marnie, too, and Jackie and Marika for opening the day. Viev, thank you for introducing me. So yes, I am Megan Price, and I am so grateful to be here and so grateful to see all of your faces and to be spending these next 2 days together. So I am going to be talking with you this morning about the theme of this third Insight Summit, collaborating with Insight, creating community, and expanding horizons. So I'm going to touch on each of those ideas, the first one being insight, the second one being community, and the third being horizons, all in this context of collaboration, of working together, being together, creating together, learning together, moving forward together for change and progress and well-being. Because that is what is connecting us right now. We're here, we want to make positive impacts. We want to help our communities and promote peace and fairness and justice in all the diverse ways that each of us are contributing. And we want to do that in a way that works and is sustainable, which is why I'm drawn to Insight, and I imagine is why many of you are drawn to it too. So let's go ahead and start there. I've been working with the Insight approach since around 2008, 2009, when I took Cheryl Picard's graduate certificate program in conflict resolution and learned Insight mediation. The Insight approach was still relatively new, kind of in its early days then, right as Cheryl and Ken Melchin's book, Transforming Conflict Through Insight, was coming out. But it was still really popular, as new as it was. I just remember that long, narrow room in that mid-century Carleton University law building was packed with government employees and union reps and reporters and conflict resolutionists, mediators from all different specialties. And actually, that's where I met Marnie Jull in that big, long room. But it was absolutely packed, and already the Insight approach was attracting a diversity of people and a diversity of applications. I, for one, wasn't there to become a mediator. I was a student of reconciliation and wanted to understand the inner workings of conflict and healing, which I had learned that Cheryl and Ken were starting to figure out. And I remember that part of the course was keeping a journal. We had these learning journals, which were really helpful, and I always recommend those. But in that journal, I wrote a goal, and that was to be able to articulate the Insight approach, to be able to tell people who asked what I was learning about, because the Insight approach was different, right? It wasn't a recipe or a concept or even a description, right? It explained my inner experience. It tapped into my intuition, and it felt grounding and illuminating, but the words to articulate it weren't there yet, because I couldn't see it. It was asking me to look inward, look towards, what was going on in my decision making that was leading me to act, and then also to get curious about others. And so it was new, it was different, but it was so very intuitive and on point. But I did find myself asking myself, how do I put words to the Insight approach? How do I articulate it? And some of you might be asking the same thing, but after 12 years of working at it and learning from amazing scholars and practitioners, I think I'm approaching a pretty good sense of what the Insight approach is. And so I wanted to share that with you today to frame our day, our next 2 days kind of together. So the Insight approach is a method. It's a tool for discovery that moves us through the challenges and binds and conflicts that are the result of human decision making toward new possibilities for action and change. That's the Insight approach as I've come to understand it. It's a method. It's a tool for discovery, which is why it can be used and applied in an amazing array of contexts and professions, from conflict with your neighbor or your boss to conflict, on a larger scale between political parties or organizational factions, to policy changes, family disputes, social work, public service, institution building, to reconciliation and healing, and even to art, right? There's just this vast diversity of applications, because the insight approach is a method. It's a tool for discovery that's based on a recognition of self and how we use our minds to come to know, to value, or discern significance through the feelings we generate about what we think we know, and then decide to act in response. It's also based on a recognition that self is only possible in connection with others, and that what we choose to do simultaneously impacts and is impacted by our social connections from the past, the present, the future, all of that. And as selves together, we are creating and are created by the world around us through the decisions that we make. And the insight approach helps us understand that. And that's incredible. Not only because we don't often take the time to think about that complexity, let alone lean into it, but once we do, in a way that's guided by discovery around how we've used our minds to act, it puts order to some of that complexity. It begins to sort out what otherwise appears chaotic and intractable. And it does this not through a unifying theory of all things or deductive reasoning or, knowing the answer beforehand. Approaches that strive for the comfort of certainty. Really, it's the opposite. It does it by getting curious, by asking questions, by orienting ourselves towards discovery, by really attending to challenges on their own terms, in terms of the decisions that have made them so. And that's why it works and leads to solutions and resolutions and change that make a difference and that sustain in a diversity of contexts. So that's how I've come to articulate the insight approach as a method, a tool for discovery that moves us through challenges and binds and conflicts towards new possibilities and change by getting curious about the interiority of decision making, the very building blocks of those challenges. But, a method is nothing without a community to use it and to refine it, which is why we're here today, to come together as a community around insight as a method for peace and change, to get curious, to discover, to learn, engage. And only 6 months ago, we launched EC, Insight Collaborations International, as a central meeting ground for the insight approach, with the mission of creating an expansive, collaborative community of insight thinkers and practitioners to build capacity, strengthen insight method and practice, and bring insight to new and innovative applications. They're lofty goals that are really only possible by working together, fostering curiosity and leveraging the strengths, perspectives, and contributions of each of us. Because really, when we're talking about our interiority and being reflexive about what we're doing with our minds and curious about what others are doing with their minds while we're using those same minds to participate in the world, we have to recognize that interiority is not what we're accustomed to paying attention to, right? We're not really used to looking in and wondering about what is significant to us, why this or that or the other decision is the right thing to do. We pay more attention to what we encounter, to the thing in front of us, to what's immediate or pressing, right? Than to that knowing, valuing, and deciding, or the roles and the contexts and systems that generate the encounter, that build it. And, that's just because it's the way our eyes and our senses are oriented. They're oriented outwards, but we can attend to our interiority and to the interiority of others, even though it's a bit like, listening to a whisper in a noisy room. But it helps to make out that whisper or tune out the other noise with the help not only of method, right? What do we want to discover? What are we listening for? But also with the help of others, right? What are you noticing, hearing, wondering, discerning, and doing that can expand what I notice, hear, wonder, discern, and do? And when we do this together, when we engage in insight method together, we expand our horizons. We allow ourselves and give ourselves that opportunity to push what we think we know. We let go of certainty and stretch ourselves to really discover and to grow, and out of that, make change. So that's what this summit, the Third Insight Summit, is about: building community and expanding horizons in collaboration together around insight as a method, as a tool for discovery that can help us forge lasting and sustainable change in whatever context that we're called to. And so we really do, we have an amazing, amazing day, 2 days ahead of us. Today we have workshops in mediation practice. We have a workshop on embodiment, on sharing insight as a way of making a living. We have a circle process that explores curiosity around threat, and a dialogue on making peace. And we've all chosen to come together today, this very important day commemorating truth and reconciliation, to participate. So I wanted to take that choice, that decision to act, as a platform for using insight method and getting curious about our own and each other's interiority to start building community, or build on the community that we've already begun to build, right? And expand our horizons together. So with that, what we're going to do now is break into some small groups and start to engage with each other. We'll probably get into groups of about 3 or 4 to get curious and discover the valuing and the deciding that brought you here today. So we have 2 questions that we're going to ask you to answer in your groups. And the first question, I'd like you to ask and take turns answering, links you're valuing, what's significant to you, to your decision making. How did what was significant to you lead you to choose to participate today in the Insight Summit? In other words, what made you want to come to the Insight Summit today? So we're going to ask you to discuss that question first, and then to round out, I'm going to put it in the chat, and then to round out the intended good or the aim of your choice, there's a second question, which is, what are you hoping will come of that choice? So there we go. And you're going to have 15 minutes or so together, to do some discovery and really get your curiosity going. And then we'll come back to the main room and talk more. So does that sound okay for everybody? All right.